Chapter 2 In the Shadow of the Tomb. The cold winds of the Necron tomb world swept over the ruined Imperial Temple, their howling echoing through the skeletal remains of ancient spires. At the edge of the temple's shadow, Brother Captain Marius of the Ultramarines and Brother Seraphiel of the Blood Angels stood in grim silence. Before them loomed the tomb's entrance, a dark, ominous chasm glowing faintly with alien energy. Marius's cobalt blue armor gleamed under the pale light, its polished ceramite unmarred by the sand swirling around him. Beside him, Seraphiel's crimson plate seemed to almost glow, adorned with ornate golden filigree, an echo of the noble legacy of Sanguinius. Breaking the silence, Marius spoke, his tone calm yet commanding. Unless you forget, Blood Angel, the Ultramarines ensure the Imperium's survival. 3 in 4 chapters descend from our gene seed. Ours is a legacy of strength and discipline. Seraphiel smirked faintly, his dark eyes glimmering with quiet resolve. And yet, Brother Captain, strength alone is not enough. The Imperium needs more than discipline, it needs hope. It needs fire. That is what my chapter gives, even at the cost of our own souls. Marius studied the Blood Angel for a moment before nodding. Hope and fire. Noble ideals, brother, but ideals will not keep either of us alive in that tomb. What we face here is a threat that neither fire nor discipline can defeat alone. Seraphiel glanced toward the yawning abyss ahead of them, his expression darkening. Which is why I should be the one to descend, Brother Captain. If both of us fall, there will be no one to report back to the chapters, no one to warn the Imperium of the Necron threat that festers here. Marius turned sharply to face him, his eyes hard. You would leave me behind. Stand here idle while your brothers descend into darkness. No, Seraphiel, that is not the warrior I see before me. It is not cowardice, Brother Captain, Seraphiel replied, his voice steady but strained. It is duty. I am expendable. You, as a captain of the Ultramarines, are not. Marius frowned, his voice lowering but carrying the weight of command. Do not dishonor yourself with such words. No son of Sanguinius is expendable. You carry the blood of an angel. Your chapter's legacy is one of sacrifice, yes, but it is also one of greatness. To stand here and survive while others fall is not the role for a blood angel. Seraphiel faltered for a moment, his hands tightening on the hilt of his power sword. Then who will carry the warning? Who will ensure that others come to finish what we started if we fail? Marius's expression softened, though his tone remained firm. You will, brother, not because you are lesser, but because you are capable. This is not a retreat, it is a trust I place in you. Someone must live to warn the chapters, and I will not entrust that task to just anyone. I trust you, Seraphiel. The Blood Angel stared at him, the words cutting deeper than any blade. He saw no condescension in Marius's eyes, only respect and certainty. For all his initial resistance, Seraphiel realized the truth, Marius was not protecting him out of pity but ensuring their mission's survival in the only way he knew how, as a leader. With a heavy sigh, Seraphiel lowered his gaze. I do not like this, Brother Captain. But, I will honor your trust. The Imperium must survive, no matter the cost. Marius placed a firm hand on Seraphiel's shoulder. And it will, brother. You will ensure it. But should I fall, remember this, we are brothers, no matter what blood flows through our veins. Ultramarine or Blood Angel, our purpose is the same. Seraphiel nodded, his voice quieter now. I will not fail you, Marius. May the Emperor guide you. Marius offered a faint smile before donning his helm. And may Sanguinius's fire burn within you. Farewell, Seraphiel. As Marius descended into the tomb's shadowy depths, Seraphiel stood at the edge, his crimson armor catching the last light of the dying sun. Though his heart burned with the instinct to follow, he remained, knowing his duty now lay elsewhere. He whispered a quiet prayer to the Emperor and his Primarch, promising that Marius's sacrifice would not be in vain. The wind howled around him as he took up his position at the temple ruins, watching over the tomb's entrance. Alone, he would wait, ready to fight should the Necron threat rise from the depths. Though divided by duty, their bond as brothers endured, a testament to the unity of the Adeptus Astartes, forged in blood and honor. The ruins of the Imperial Temple stood in solemn silence under the darkened skies. Brother Seraphiel stood alone, his power sword sheathed and his chainsword gripped tightly in both hands, its teeth occasionally whirring in anticipation. The howling wind had died, leaving only the oppressive stillness of the tomb world to fill his ears. For hours, he had waited, crimson-clad and unmoving, his golden gaze fixed on the entrance to the Necron tomb. His thoughts strayed to Brother Captain Marius, the Ultramarine who had descended into the abyss alone. You trusted me to survive, Marius. Now I must trust you to return. Suddenly, faint echoes of heavy, Uneven footsteps broke the silence. The sound sent a chill through Seraphiel's veins. His hands tightened on the hilt of his chainsword as he turned sharply, his enhanced vision piercing the haze. From the gloom emerged a familiar figure, tall and imposing in cobalt blue ceramite, but unsteady. "Seraphiel," came the rasping voice. "Marius." Seraphiel's heart leapt as he dropped his guard, running toward his battle brother. As he approached, his joy turned to dread. The mighty captain staggered forward, his normally immaculate armor scorched and cracked. Glowing green particles shimmered ominously across his back, the remnants of a Necron atom-destroying ray. His helmet was gone, revealing a face pale with exhaustion, his jaw clenched tightly in pain. Seraphiel reached him just as Marius faltered. "Brother, lean on me. Let me help you." He reached out, his hands catching the ultramarine before he could fall to the ground. But Marius, with a grimace, shrugged off Seraphiel's support. "No," he rasped, his voice strained yet commanding. With shaking hands, he pulled a small, heavily sealed box from a compartment on his belt. Its surface was marked with sacred sigils and Mechanicus inscriptions. "This," Marius said, pressing the box into Seraphiel's hands. "The device, to disable the shields. Take it." Seraphiel stared at the box, realization dawning in his eyes. "Brother Captain, you cannot mean." Marius interrupted him with a sharp glare. "No words, Seraphiel. Only action. Take it, and retreat. 2 of us are not enough to destroy this tomb. Rally reinforcements. Finish the mission." Seraphiel's hands trembled as he took the box, his golden eyes filled with grief. He wanted to argue, to insist that Marius stay with him, but the captain's resolve left no room for debate. "I swear, Marius," Seraphiel said, his voice thick with emotion. "I will return, and I will destroy this tomb. For you." Marius gave a faint smile, though pain racked his every movement. "You carry the fire of angels, Seraphiel. Now, go. Do not let my sacrifice be for nothing." Before Seraphiel could respond, a new sound reached his ears, metallic, precise, and unrelenting. The rhythmic pounding of countless Necron footsteps echoed through the ruins. The mechanical soldiers were coming, their relentless march growing louder with every second. Seraphiel's heart raced as he glanced toward the tomb's entrance. "They're close," he muttered, gripping the box tightly. He turned to Marius, his voice urgent. "We must move." But Marius shook his head, his strength rapidly fading. "I will delay them, for as long as I can." "No," Seraphiel said firmly, his voice rising with desperation. "I will not leave you. You must." Marius roared, his voice booming despite his weakened state. He drew his power sword, planting it in the ground to steady himself. "This is my duty, Seraphiel. Yours is to finish what we started. Go." Seraphiel hesitated for a single, agonizing moment before nodding, his teeth gritted in determination. "I will return with vengeance, brother captain. You have my word." With that, Seraphiel turned and began to sprint toward the extraction point, the sacred box clutched tightly in his hand. Behind him, he heard the unmistakable hum of Necron weapons powering up and the clash of Marius's sword meeting metallic enemies. As he ran, a single thought burned in his mind: "I will get them home. This is not the end." The sounds of battle faded into the distance, but Seraphiel did not look back. His retreat was not cowardice, it was survival, fueled by a promise to his brother and the Imperium. Somewhere in the dark halls of the tomb, Marius made his final stand, cobalt and gold shining brightly even as the enemy surrounded him. And Seraphiel, the angel who carried the fire of hope, disappeared into the horizon, vowing to bring light to the shadowed world once again. The shelter was plunged into uneasy silence, broken only by the occasional sound of shuffling feet or whispered prayers. The air felt heavy, not just from the damp confines of the underground refuge but from the dread that gripped everyone inside. They had heard it, the distinct sound of the metal hatch above being wrenched open. "What now?" someone muttered, their voice trembling. "They've found us," another whispered, panic rising in their tone. "It's the Xenos." The people huddled closer together, their fear palpable. Then came the footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, echoing ominously through the tunnels. The sound was unlike anything they'd heard before, not the clanking, mechanical march of the Necrons, but something more methodical, more purposeful. The priest stepped forward, his ragged robes trailing behind him as he held a small, flame-wreathed staff aloft. His hands trembled, but his resolve did not waver. "Stay here," he commanded, his voice steady despite the terror in his eyes. "I will see what comes." As the priest approached the shadowed tunnel entrance, he began to chant softly, calling upon the Emperor's light. The flames atop his staff grew brighter, casting flickering illumination across the ferrocrete walls. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until finally, a massive figure emerged from the darkness. A collective gasp swept through the civilians. The priest froze, his eyes widening as the light of his staff illuminated crimson ceramite. The figure was immense, towering over him, his armor battered and scorched but gleaming with the golden aquila of the Imperium. "An angel," the priest breathed, his voice trembling as he stepped back instinctively. The blood angel paused, his bolter held in one hand, his other resting near the hilt of his chainsword. Realizing the fear in their eyes, he slowly reached up and removed his helmet. With a soft hiss, the seal broke, and the helm came away, revealing a face that was both noble and severe. His pale skin was streaked with blood and dirt, and his golden eyes burned with intensity. Some of the civilians gasped in awe, while others shrank back, still uncertain. The sight of him was as intimidating as it was awe-inspiring. Seraphiel, sensing their hesitation, quietly holstered his bolter. "Greetings," he said, his voice deep but calm, echoing in the stillness. The priest stepped forward cautiously, his hands gripping the staff tightly. His voice faltered as he asked, "Are you one of the Emperor's angels?" "I am," Seraphiel replied simply, his golden gaze meeting the priest's. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a small voice broke the tension. "You're bleeding," said a young boy, no older than 7, stepping forward from the crowd. His face was smeared with dirt, his ragged clothes hanging loosely on his thin frame. His wide eyes stared at the crimson warrior with innocent curiosity. Seraphiel glanced down, following the boy's gaze to a deep gash along his side, where his armor had been breached. Dried blood stained the ceramite around the wound, though it had already begun to clot. "I was," Seraphiel said, his tone softening. "But no longer." The boy tilted his head, his brow furrowing. "I didn't know angels could bleed," he said, his voice filled with wonder. Seraphiel knelt slowly, lowering himself to the boy's level. The civilians tensed, unsure of his intent, but the blood angel's movements were deliberate and calm. He reached out, gently placing his massive gauntlet on the boy's small shoulder. "Even angels bleed," Seraphiel said, his voice quiet but firm. "But we do not fall. Not while there are those to protect." The boy stared at him for a moment, then nodded, a faint smile breaking through the dirt on his face. The priest, emboldened by the exchange, stepped closer. "You are truly one of the Emperor's chosen," he murmured. "What brings you here, angel of death?" Seraphiel stood, his full height towering over them once more. His golden gaze swept over the frightened group, lingering on the faces of the weak and weary. He took a deep breath. "I have come to ensure your survival," he said, his voice steady. "The Necron threat will not claim you. Not while I draw breath." The civilians exchanged uncertain glances, but the priest nodded, his expression one of cautious hope. "Then we will place our faith in you, as we do in the Emperor." Seraphiel looked at the priest, then at the boy, and finally at the group as a whole. The weight of their hope was heavy, but he bore it without complaint. "Stay together," he said firmly. "The Emperor's light shines even in the darkest places. And so long as I stand, that light will not falter." The footsteps of distant Necrons echoed faintly down the tunnels, growing louder. Seraphiel's hand instinctively moved to the hilt of his chainsword. He turned to the priest. "Guide him to safety," he said. "I will hold the line." As the civilians moved to obey, Seraphiel donned his helmet once more. The boy lingered for a moment, looking back at the blood angel before finally retreating with his family. Seraphiel stood alone at the entrance, his chainsword roaring to life as he prepared to face the darkness once more. Present day. In the tranquil garden of the Roswell Manor, the morning sunlight filtered through the trees, casting soft patterns across the grass. Seraphiel knelt slowly, lowering himself to the young half-elf's level. His silver hair caught the light, though his eyes were shadowed with uncertainty. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice carrying a mix of gratitude and hesitation. "For everything. I don't remember who I am, but until I recover my memories, I'd like to serve you, if you'll allow it." Amelia tilted her head, her amethyst eyes full of curiosity and warmth. "You don't remember your name?" she asked gently. He shook his head. "No, not yet." She paused, studying him thoughtfully, then offered a small, reassuring smile. "Well, until you do, I suppose we'll just have to figure it out together."